Okay, welcome to Into the Channel, a podcast primarily about women's football. Before we hit the pitch, if you enjoy the show or love women's football as much as your boys do, kick it with us already. We're doing it every single week, spanning the wide world of women's football. And this week, we are spanning. Subscribe, follow YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you like to watch or listen at ITC_pod on X. I am your host, Dino DeCespedes, and as always, I am joined by my co-host, Mr. Grant Engel. What is up, man?
I'm feeling fantastic, buddy. Some good matches. We're getting dangerously close to the end of the actual most important matches in the European leagues, which gets me in my feels a little. But luckily, we got a pretty good league over here too, so still plenty to watch and discuss.
Yeah, we'll have to do one of those heartfelt montages of us laughing and having jolly times on the show under some very emotional contemporary elevator music.
One shining moment, perhaps.
Perfect. Lots of football this week to cover. Where would you like to get started?
Let's start in chronological order, as we are one to do from time to time. Friday afternoon over here in the U.S., Friday evening over in France. I thought it was a banger of a match. I managed to, not that anybody cares, but I managed to block out all social media. I didn't look at the FootMob app. I absorbed the match relatively late at night with a beverage or two, completely unencumbered by any knowledge of the results.
Nice.
Lyon 2, PSG 1. I feel like this D1F final requires the cracking of a beverage. Look at you.
It's a team effort out here. It's been a long season.
That was a good sound.
Appreciate that. Cheers.
So let's talk about it. So Tabitha Chawinga looked like the best player on the field, maybe for either side. I think you can make an argument maybe for Wendy Renard, maybe a couple other players. Wendy Renard sneaks under the radar sometimes as the best player on the field. But I digress. Tabitha Chawinga, in a losing effort, was the most dangerous player pretty much at all times for PSG. She got her goal. We'll talk about that probably a little later. I understand this. It's probably a little weird talking about a player on the losing team. I just thought it was a Herculean effort from her in what ended up being a match that was closer than it probably should have been because of her.
I agree with that. I kept thinking to myself, all right, the next goal, who might it come from? And it was always Tabitha Chawinga at the top of the list in terms of like who was the favorite in that category. Yep. I was always expecting her to be next. So I wanted to hit a couple stats real quick that I thought were really interesting and kind of lost on my first viewing with the naked eye. So Lyon lost the XG battle to PSG, 0.5 to 1.1. That one's not so surprising. Lyon, though, only managed 40% possession. They had less pass accuracy by a good amount, 75 to 84. And PSG completed 200 more passes than Lyon. And then Lyon only managed 2 shots on target, both of them for goals.
Pretty good percentage.
You can juxtapose that against PSG's 5 shots on target from 11 shots total, and was only able to cash in, obviously, the one time with the Chawinga goal. In your watching of the match, is that what it felt like? When I was watching it, I kind of felt like Lyon was in control of the match, even though all the stats seemed to fall in favor of PSG.
I think that was kind of my feeling as well. And I'm just going back and looking at it real quick. I think we might just have to accept, like in the last PSG Lyon match, the second leg of the semifinal, PSG won the possession battle there too. And I just think that Bon Pastor and that talented midfield, the anchors that they have in defense, are just like, we can play without the ball and still kind of dictate the terms. And it just seems like they're talented enough to do that. So it's like, it's taken several times for me to see it. Maybe I'm a bit slow on the uptake on this end, but I was just like, oh yeah, they just might not give a shit about holding the ball that much because they know they have that clinicality in the final third with Diani and Cascarino and insert 5 more players here. They're just like, okay, yeah, you hold the ball for a while and then we'll take it off you and then we'll score.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I mean, they ran a similar playbook to the one they ran as well against PSG in the Champions League, which is let's sit players back. And to your point, if they want to break with 3 players, how about breaking with Cascarino, Melchi Dumornay, and Danielle Van de Donk?
Pretty good.
Or Cascarino, Diani, and Damaris. So, in like every opportunity they get, it's like, okay, we'll commit 7 field players to the back. Just keep, lock things down, and we've got 3 Ferraris that are just going to kind of do donuts up there in the final third and see what happens. And I think you think about that first goal, the ball from Danielle Van de Donk, magic to Cascarino.
Yeah.
And obviously Cascarino, like, continuing to find more and more of her groove as this year progresses, and she just seems to be peaking at the exact perfect time for Lyon. But what a ball from Van de Donk, and just a monster goal to open up the scoring in this one.
Yeah, I think Cascarino, and we've talked about it too, because she was coming back from injury and she missed the World Cup. Like, you and I, frankly, will just raise our hands. Like, we didn't know much about her. Like, we knew she was a good player. We read in the World Cup build-up, like, oh, okay, they're missing Cascarino, and she's apparently a good player. Now, watching her play, you could probably drop her on a lot of teams, and she would be the best player on a lot of different teams in the world. Like, she's incredible. The skill at pace and the shooting at pace just continues to amaze me every time I watch her.
I totally agree with that. And just as you were saying that, Lyon don't have a player like her. And it's so interesting when you think about their attacking players. They're all kind of like different makeups.
Yeah.
Cascarino, Melchi Dumornay, Diani, Hegerberg, Le Sommer, like Van de Donk, De Brits, like these are all players that have like very different makeups, that bring something different. And it's like, now you have to contend with a specific 3 or 4 that are in attack mode, and you haven't seen these 3 or 4, even though these two teams have played 91 times this season. Somehow this combination is the first time that's come up. But just credit to Lyon. I think they're just so difficult. I think the other standout player, I mentioned her just a few moments ago, Melchi Dumornay.
Yeah.
She is so strong and so opportunistic. She had a few monster plays I just kind of need to call out. Obviously, the tremendous gaff from Kietersnik, where Dumornay is putting pressure on her. That becomes Lyon's second goal, essentially the winner in the match.
Yeah.
There was another play in the second half where Chewinga's out on the break. She's one-on-one with Carpenter, who, give me the whole supercut of Chewinga Carpenter one-on-ones. But
nice.
Chewinga's attacking. She's going at Carpenter. Carpenter's holding up. Gio's behind. And, in that instance, a lot of open field, you kind of favor Chewinga, even though she's going 2-on-1, just because, she's so powerful, so unpredictable. And our guy Camp Hope, you can hear him kind of starting to get animated with this break. And Melchi Dumornay covers about 40 yards in like 2 seconds and scoots right into the back of the play. Before you know it, she goes from the opposite side of midfield to firmly in the defense. And by that point, she's the first one there. And then a fraction of a second later, there's 2 other Lyon defenders there. And our guy Camp Hope says, and I quote, 5 white-shirted players between her and the goal. End quote. That's the end of the chance for PSG. So their commitment to defense continues to be really impressive. Obviously, we have the Champions League final looming. That's something that I've kind of thought a lot about since Friday.
I like that. And that specific play, I think it says a lot about Dumornay's mentality, a lot about her willingness to go back and do that kind of work. You mentioned her strength earlier. I have in my notes, like in the first 10 minutes of this match where PSG was a little bit on the front foot for like a little bit during that beginning portion, Dumornay was like playing a little out of control. Like she had one dive and then she had a foul shortly after that. And I was like, oh, okay, let's see how this goes. And she just played herself into a good rhythm. And I feel like she's kind of that type of player. Like you see Diani do this. You see like Trinity Rodman do this for the Washington Spirit and obviously the U.S. Women's National Team, where it's just like, I'm going to get myself right by tracking back on defense, by winning the ball, by helping out my teammates, and then pushing back forward. It's like a tried and true way to get yourself going in almost any kind of two-way sport. It's like, okay, let me lock in on defense for a minute, kind of control that stuff that's more related to my effort, and then the skill stuff will kind of come with it.
Yeah, 100%. And I think playing back that game, I can't even count how many times there was an attacking player just floating around, like the deepest defensive third.
Yep.
Whether it was Dumornay or Haran. Diani was super deep for most of the match. She was just like, let me just get my hands on the ball, or get my feet on the ball early, and then be able to initiate some offense. I think that really is the story of this Lyon evolution of the last 5-6 weeks. Just defensively, their ability to squeeze the game. There was probably a 25-30 minute stretch in the second half where it felt like every single one of PSG's actions started with either a lateral pass or like a back pass. Like they would get it and like, okay, let's just kind of reset and like, give ourselves a little bit of breathing room, a little bit of space.
Dude, totally agree. That's a great call out. In my notes too, I had just written between the 30 and 45 minute mark that PSG, it just felt like they were squandering any of the few chances that they were even able to create when they're moving forward. It's just because they were under duress pretty much at all times. The press was kind of whipping their ass for long stretches. Let me get to one announcer related thing. Obviously, you mentioned our guy, Cam Pope, on the call. Absolute masterful performance by him. This is in my notes. I think this was like near the 20th minute. As Cam calls a match, he does such a great job of like weaving in context and past matches and the history of these players. And he was talking about all the players who have made the move from PSG to Lyon. And he's just kind of like weaving in these stories, making sure that like the viewer is very informed. Near the 20-minute, I'm going to count this as an into the channel reference. He brings up the draw between Brann and Lyon at Brann during the Champions League in the group stage, brings it up, and he just had to throw in there, and that equalizer by Senia Gaupset in that match. So we're watching the D1F final, and here we are not only getting the Brann mentioned a few times, but also a Gaupset mention. And
let's go.
In my notes in all caps, I just say our guy is affiliated. So like, come on, Cam. I know Cam is weaving these stories in because he's a great broadcaster and he's telling people the context of these clubs. I'm counting that as an into the channel shout out.
Hell yeah. ITC record book. It's his first shout out on the air. But yeah, shout out to our guy Cam Pope. Definitely the Tabitha Chewinga of European women's football coverage. So yeah. Shout out to our guy. One attacking player that I didn't mention, Amel Majri. She obviously comes in as a sub. So she, from an offside position, puts the ball in the net, right? A minute after coming on, as she do.
Yep.
It reminded me of you because she puts the ball in the net and then doesn't celebrate. And then in my head, I can hear you being like, you're a professional athlete. Don't you know that you're offside? How do you not know that you're offside? It's like, oh, finally we get the athlete that
she knew.
Total professional. She knew. She puts it in. She's got teammates running up to her, ready to start the party. And she's like, let's see. I know what time it was. That was just a target practice out here. But we're going to get this trophy anyway. So shout out to her and a funny ITC moment as well.
Yeah, I mean, it just speaks to her genius, her like presence of mind out there. You see it in the way she plays. She clearly has the spatial awareness of basically a submarine radar system. Like she knows where everybody is on the pitch while she's on the ball concentrating. Just an incredible player. And she's coming off the bench for this side.
Unfair.
Yeah, come on.
This Lyon side, including the playoffs, they end the season with one loss, which came in a meaningless final week match against Bordeaux, and one draw, the home one to PSG that we talked about a couple different times, and 22 wins. It's 22-1-1. They lift the D1F trophy. Congratulations to them. Wanted to do a little quick, get a little temperature check to see if you had any thoughts on the Champions League final. The one thing that I kind of kept noodling with is obviously Lyon defensively, what we've been talking about. They wanted PSG to have to work the ball down the field by stringing together a lot of short, accurate passes. Mm-hmm. Anything over 8 or 10 yards, we're in every passing lane. So forget about that. You're going to have to work this ball down the field, one short pass at a time, one little touch at a time, and we don't think you can do it. Now, they were super impressive defensively, but Barcelona, I think they can do it. So the question is, do we see a different type of game plan defensively? Do they take more of an offensive tact? Obviously, like this PSG side gave Lyon troubles earlier in the season, and I think the more times they met up, the more Lyon was able to kind of like win the war while losing some of the battles on the pitch.
You're gonna ask? I mean, let's get another Brann reference in here. Is Bone Pastor watching those Brann matches and going, we got a pretty good back four. If we can soak up enough of the Barcelona possession without letting them, you can't let Barcelona pass too close to the 18. You can't let them start knocking it around down there, or you're already dead.
Yep.
This is, watching DAZN and seeing those advertisements for the unification of the world heavyweight, all the world heavyweight championship belts. They might as well have just started saying the same thing about Lyon versus Barcelona. They might as well just use a lot of the same voiceovers about unifying the greatest title in the world. Carpenter, Basha, Gilles, Renard. Biggest match of the season. I mean, you lifted the league trophy. The league trophy is what you play for. Mm-hmm. We're talking about you are now put up against the team everybody says is the best in the world, and you have a legitimate claim to that title as well. Can you four match up against the offensive juggernaut that is Barcelona? I think you're spot on. I think that's going to be the match, and I'll take my one-take chip and bet that Bon Pastor and Lyon play a similar style to what they've been playing. Go with what got you there.
Interesting. There's also some tape that Bon Pastor can go to involving Myra Ramirez and Chelsea, and maybe thinking about Melchi Dumornay a little bit in that Myra Ramirez role. Some similarities there, definitely from a physical standpoint.
Great goal.
From a speed and assertiveness standpoint. My one prediction around lineup, I think we'll be surprised by the Lyon lineup.
Interesting.
It's something that Barcelona won't have had a lot of chances to digest tape on, because I think Lyon's going to have to be a little bit offensive minded.
Sure.
Because Barcelona, I feel like they're going to score unless Lyon just kind of wants to make it maybe a 1-0 type game.
Yeah.
Because they have the defensive-minded players to do it. Like, even their attacking players defensively can give you a lot of trouble. Like, there are dogs out there. Haran, Van de Donk, Damaris. Like, it's not just the back four. Like, and then you have Dumornay and Diani tracking all the way back. Mm-hmm. And they're tough to get the ball from too. I think we're going to see a legitimate change of pace and a good amount of surprises come Saturday.
I can see it. I can believe that. I mean, you talked about Marjorie's no celly because she knew she was offside. You remember when she scored that goal against PSG in the semifinal, and she hit you with the call me? She might just go into Sonia's office this week and be like, you want some offense to start the match? How about call me? Let me in the starting 11.
100%. I want to shift gears now to the WSL.